Oh,
is your cat still hanging out on your desk?
No, he left. Everybody left me, actually.
Yeah.
But that's probably
Mulligan
good
also
because they
left.
like to walk all over my keyboard and get into
I have
all
a
of my
cat
stuff.
box that Mulligan sits in my desk,
Yes.
and it traps him because he can't resist the box. And then
Yeah. See, I think that's smart. I think I need a cat box for my desk.
Mm-hmm.
I like that idea.
This is how you know you are a cat person / cat lady, is because you rearrange your
100%.
furniture and your entire house to meet the needs of the felines.
Yeah. I mean, we just put like $200 worth of cat shelves on our wall, so
yes.
not that long ago. That's the decoration on that wall. It's a place for the kitties.
Literally, when I was setting up my home office, I purposely bought an L-shaped desk so that one side of it would be long enough to see the window so that Mulligan could look out the window by standing on the desk.
Excellent.
You know,
we're getting rid of a desk chair, and so I put it out in our mudroom, and Willow decided she really likes sitting on that chair, so I put one of her beds on it, and now we're not getting rid of it, I guess.
Yeah. Now the chair just
lives in the
mudroom forever.
Yes, yeah, it's just like this random desk chair that's old, has her bed in it. She sleeps in it every day. And then eventually she'll probably get tired of it, but for now.
You gotta wait until they're tired of it.
Yep.
It's like when you get a package in the mail and there's packing paper. And then
yes,
that
I
just
always
sits
leave
on
that
the
out.
floor until the cat gets tired of it or it goes into shreds.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I leave the box open for them too. And
yeah, it's the cat's paper now.
Yes. I'm Katie.
And I'm Emily.
We're two long-distance best friends with a passion for learning about all the things that make everyday life interesting.
With my PhD in geography
and my master's in library science,
doing deep dives on topics is our idea of a fun time together. We'll share our findings with you on
Researching the Obvious. Just finished Thanksgiving.
Yes.
And now we're head on into the Christmas season. And then right after that is New Year's. So I know you've told me before, but I want our listeners to hear about your New Year's tradition because I think it's very unique. And I always enjoyed hearing about it at school. Because, I mean, Christmas and New Year's, we've never spent them together.
No, it's true. You and I have never spent Christmas or New Year's together.
Yeah. We'll change that someday.
Yeah. Someday, I'm sure.
Yes.
Yeah. Not that we didn't have Christmas traditions, because we did. New Year's to me is my favorite holiday. I like the idea of New Year's. I like sort of the marking of the passing of time. It's nice to reflect and also look forward. I like that part of New Year's, so I think it's a nice holiday. So I really liked New Year's, but I also feel like my family's New Year's traditions growing up were very specific. Like a lot more specific than Christmas traditions.
Yes.
We just always had a big party. So when I was younger, my parents were in a bowling league. And the house I grew up in was near the bowling alley that their bowling league was in. And so we would always on New Year's go to the bowling alley and we would bowl until like 8 or 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
And so we'd bowl at the bowling alley with the bowling league. And then everyone would come back to my parents' house afterwards. And then, you know, you have food and all that stuff at my parents' house. And it's a big party. And then everyone, you know, does the countdown to midnight. And at midnight,
you watch the ball drop, right?
Yeah.
On NBC.
Watch the ball drop on TV. Absolutely. Put on Dick Clark and watch the ball drop. And then everyone sings Auld Lang Syne in like a giant circle.
Okay. All right. The whole song?
Yeah. It's more of like a mumbling of the words. And then for Auld Lang Syne.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even know how to sing along. I could maybe hum along.
Yeah. Yeah. That would work. It's more of a general,
like a Peanuts.
Yes.
Like
a general word-ish, like Yeah. Everyone does that. And then, because my family has a lot of musicians, then we would go outside and march around the entire house, and everyone had their instruments. And then we would march down the street like a parade and have a whole band. And then our neighbors would come outside, and because they expected it at some point in my life, they just started to expect this to happen.
There go the Feckities.
But, you know, it wasn't just the Feckities doing this. It was everyone that was at my parents' house. So it was not a small crowd. It was like 25 of us or something marching down the street. And the people who couldn't play instruments, they had little horns and like noisemakers and stuff. So we were very obnoxious. Yeah. Probably some people didn't like us very much. I don't know. So march down the street playing music and then march back. And then usually it was snowing because Rochester, New York.
Right.
And so we would all do snow angels in the snow.
Okay.
That was a necessary component of this situation.
Okay.
Then once you get back in the house, usually you'd play a very drunk game of Pictionary.
Okay.
Although when I was a kid, of course, I wasn't the one drunk. I just thought the adults were being real weird with their drawings or something. Pictionary.
Yeah. So you guys even stayed up after midnight.
Oh, for sure. My whole family is like a family of night owls, I feel.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely after midnight, go to bed around like 2 a.m. or something. Yeah. Okay. It was a whole night.
No, my favorite part of that was always imagining you guys like this little mini marching band going down the street.
I mean, depending on the year, you'd get a pretty decent band together. There was always at least one trumpet, a handful of saxophone players. I think at one year there was four saxophone players, a trumpet, a trombone, maybe 2 trombones depending on the year. Sometimes a drummer. You know, it really just depended on the year.
Didn't your brother play the tuba?
My brother played sousaphone, so...
Oh, sousaphone, not tuba.
Yeah. So
sousaphone.
There was a good sousaphone. So I mean, we had a full band going on.
Yeah. I think I always enjoyed hearing about your New Year's Eve because ours have always been really quiet. New Year's Eve for my family, not that big of a deal. I mean, I remember staying up sometimes on New Year's Eve. I remember falling asleep sometimes before midnight. If I made it to midnight, I was going to bed after that because I'm not a night owl because most of my family was already in bed. And New Year's Eve was generally not that exciting for us. However, what was exciting was New Year's Day because when I was younger, we would go up to Cleveland, Ohio, where my dad's from, and we would stay with my grandparents and my grandpa's family. On New Year's Day, the Japanese side of the family would host a New Year's Day celebration with all traditional like Japanese food. So they would get sushi, and my Aunt Yuki would make chicken teriyaki and lo mein, and there were all these dishes that were always there. And that was so fascinating to me because it's just very different food than what I typically would be eating. That was the first time that I ever tried sushi, or the first time I tried octopus, or what's that? Oh, it's a fish cake. It looks like it was made with crayons. I don't know, but I'll try it. So New Year's Day was always more what we were looking forward to than the night before. It was an all afternoon kind of thing. My grandpa's whole family, at least 4 of his brothers and sisters. And then, you know, over the years, obviously some people passed away. It got smaller, but some years it was quite large, and everyone would just sit around, eat a bunch of food, and then my Uncle George would be walking around with the sake carafe, refilling everybody's sake, even though they're all saying like, no, I don't need any more. And he's like, oh, you have a little bit more. And then when my grandpa's walking around offering everybody more food, even after we're done eating, like, are you sure you don't want some popcorn or some pistachios? Even though you just ate a giant plate of food? No, I'm fine. Okay, well, I'll just leave these here. You eat them when you're ready.
Nice.
So those are my favorite memories of New Year's, is spending it with my grandpa's family, and just having all of those unique Japanese foods, and then also the experience of that Japanese culture too, because it was very distinct. It was a different experience than my mom's family or other family get-togethers that I had been to. So that was always fun. But yeah, I was always a wimp when it came to New Year's Eve. I did stay up though. I did stay up until midnight in the year 1999 because I needed to know if anything crazy was going to happen. But it was literally me, my dad, and my grandpa that stayed up. Everybody else was asleep. No one else cared.
They were unconcerned about the Y2K situation.
Yep.
I was really excited to do this episode because I distinctly remember Y2K and everything leading up to that. But I also feel like I was at an age where maybe I was a little too young to fully grasp what was actually going on.
Right.
Because we would have been in 8th grade that year, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Finishing 7th grade, started 8th grade.
Like just starting 8th grade. And I have a very distinct memory of being at that party that my parents always had. And everyone was talking about the Y2K situation. We left our computer on, which I was just talking to someone about this because that was the recommendation, was to leave your computer on.
Oh, really? I didn't remember that.
Yeah, so I remember we left our computer on.
You didn't power it down all the way and like press the power button to...
Yeah, right. No. So we left it on, and then I remember being at the party with everyone, and it was our, loud, boisterous party. We're doing all our thing, and then we finished singing Auld Lang Syne. And then my uncle goes to the stereo and puts in a CD and then starts blasting REM's It's at the End of the World as We Know It. And I think everyone at that point, it was 10 minutes after midnight at that point. So we felt safe, but
the anxiety had gone down. Yeah. Yeah, I remember sitting in the living room, like at my grandpa's house with my grandpa and my dad, and they're both engineers, so they're also having this very dry conversation about what might or might not happen with the Y2K. And I'm only half listening because I'm like 12, 13 years old. And then we watch the ball drop and we're kind of looking around like the lights don't go off. Nothing happens. I think it was like my grandpa and my dad was like, well, I guess we're going to be okay. Like, I don't know. It was so anticlimactic. I was like, well, I think it's time to go to bed.
Amazing. So this year, though, is the 25th anniversary of Y2K.
I know. I had not thought about that before we started researching this episode. Because I really honestly had not thought about Y2K in quite a while.
Let's set the scene of what life was like in 1999.
1999. We're just entering middle school. We partied
like it was 1999.
Yes. Well, you did. I did not. I did not. Okay, so 1999. Emily and Katie were headed into middle school. Everybody's favorite time of life.
8th grade.
That's right. It is the worst. I don't know. Yeah, it was terrible. You could not pay me to go back there. So 1999, what's happening in the world? What kind of stuff are we interested in? What's the musical, cultural, pop culture scene looking like? Right? So I looked up some notable things from 1999, and boy, was it taking me down memory lane. So in movies, books, and TV, let's talk about that. So Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets was just released in 1999. So book 2.
Yeah, I remember reading it at that point because I was ready for book 3 to come out, and I was so excited, and I was trying to convince all my other friends. I was like, you have to read these books. They're amazing.
Yes. So Harry Potter is still very new. The other one, which when I read this, I was like, oh my God, I remember that book because it was just everywhere. At the library, at the bookstore. Interpreter of Maladies by Jhumpa Lahiri, who's an Indian author, Indian American author. So it was a collection of short stories, and for whatever reason... Yeah, it was a big... I mean, I hung out at the library and the bookstore a lot, so I remember it being... I remember it being prominently displayed many places. It was a collection of short stories. I did read it. It was delightful. About Indian immigrants in America. So different stories of their experiences. And it actually went on to win the Pulitzer Prize for fiction. So it was not only popular, but it was kind of the highbrow book of that year. Well-respected, award-winning book. Season 2 of Sex and the City had just come out too. So that was like
So that was still
very new. Yeah, so 1998 would have been season 1 of Sex and the City, which is why they have no cell phones in that show until much later seasons. And if you go back and watch the first or second season, it's way more dated than I remember. Like, it definitely has a 90s vibe. SpongeBob SquarePants debuted.
That's crazy. I actually didn't realize that SpongeBob was that old. I remember watching SpongeBob in high school, but I guess I didn't think it was back to 99. But
yeah, I didn't either. That one surprised me. Also, Family Guy, the first season of Family Guy came out. What kind of films were released in 1999? The Mummy, which we have talked about.
I mean, we've definitely mentioned that on our show before.
Yes, on our Death Traditions. Brendan Fraser. Yeah, that's a classic. Also, The Matrix, which that one I specifically remember because it was the very first movie that I purchased on DVD, which was a new format at the time.
Yeah, we definitely didn't have a DVD player in 1999. Matrix and that ties into some of the stuff we'll talk about later, specifically with the Y2K virus. I feel like that was such a part of our collective psyche in 1999 was this general computer world futuristic technology situation. Yeah. And the Matrix for sure fits in with that trend.
Yes. I mean, at that time too, not a lot of other movies like that. Very unique cinematography. And in particular, the thing that I kept on seeing pop up, which is kind of funny to think about now, but at the time it was brand new, is when they have that scene where he's dodging the bullets in slow motion. And I remember seeing that and just being like, oh my God, like the special effects and it really was kind of a beginning point of some of the more elaborate special effects and choices like that for movies. So that one stuck out to me. Also, The Phantom Menace, was not well received. Was not well received, but
the hype was real, man. Bringing Star Wars back to the theater, there was some hype.
Indeed.
For sure.
The Blair Witch Project, which
we've also talked
remember
about that
people
show.
Flipping out about because that also was like a different method of filming.
Yeah. Well, it was the first foray into the found footage sort of movement of horror and some other genres.
That's the term I was looking for. As well as The Sixth Sense, which also I remember seeing, blew my mind.
And what was crazy about The Sixth Sense is that no one spoiled it. Shockingly.
Yeah.
Clearly, we as a collective society were like, don't spoil this movie for people. And then we didn't.
Yeah. No, it was amazing. I did want to give a shout out to the teen movie craze, which was very much in this time period and really got me through those awkward middle school, high school years with classics such as 10 Things I Hate About You, based on The Taming of the Shrew by Shakespeare.
Obsessed
and
with
then
that.
She's All That, Cruel Intentions, American Pie, which I also remember a lot of people talking about.
Oh yeah, just because American Pie was definitely within my friend group. That was like movies.
Yeah, everyone was obsessed. Sure. Yeah. They were obsessed with that raunchy teen comedy. Also, I did not realize that this was 1999, but it lives rent free in my brain, which is the Budweiser commercial, which won the best Super Bowl commercial of the year. It's the one where all these guys are calling each other and all they say is, "What's up? What's up? What's up?
What's up?"
Yeah.
That was, the lingo of the 1999.
Yep. What's up was definitely popular. And I remember kids walking down the hall and like yelling that after that commercial came.
Absolutely.
Like, just everyone was just, what's up?
Yeah. Okay. Absolutely.
Those are some of the highlights. Yeah. I looked up the music scene of 1999. So top hits of 1999, Believe by Cher and No Scrubs by TLC, which is classic.
Okay. Classic.
Eminem released his Slim Shady LP, which
my God, yes.
So controversial.
Real Slim Shady, please stand up.
Yeah. I remember there being a lot of discussion around the appropriateness of
oh, well.
of him, but perhaps that's because I grew up in the Midwest.
Maybe. I think every single boy in my entire grade had that album and sang it daily.
And also bleach tips and
the frosted tips of the hair.
Yeah. Napster launched in 1999, which for you youngins who've only ever had streaming available was like revolutionary because it was a file sharing system where you could rip off songs and movies and all sorts of stuff.
Get a song and then 17 hours later it would download to your computer.
Yeah, it would take 4 hours.
And then you could listen to it.
Yep. You could burn it onto a CD
Although I
and
never
give it
used
to someone
Napster.
else. I didn't either.
Yeah, I never used Napster. I used Kazaa.
Yes, I remember that one too.
Used that one.
Yeah, I remember that one as well.
There were several versions of this. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Mm-hmm. But Napster was the one that really started that whole thing off. So it launched in 1999. And then by December 7th, the Recording Industry Association of America filed a lawsuit against them for copyright infringement. What a time.
What a time to be alive. I remember
I had
the internet
giant,
was just brand new, really. I mean, it wasn't new. Like, it wasn't, but it was just coming into...
It was just starting to flourish.
People's households. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I feel like prior to this year, you could really only get it if you had a work space that had it, or if you, like, went to the library or at your school. People didn't really have it as accessibly in their home.
And if they did, it was dial-up. So you must also wait for the connection. And and you're tying up the phone line the entire time. Your parents are yelling at you to get off the computer. So
if you had a separate phone line, you were rich.
Yeah, pretty much. Mm-hmm. Since we're talking about the internet, I also discovered that on New Year's Day of 2000, so very end of 1999, but the first day of 2000 is when Homestar Runner, the website, launched, which this is something that sticks out in my head because I remember kids at school in the computer lab watching these videos. So if you're not familiar, it was a Flash animation site. It's supposed to be comedic, so short Flash animations
because
with these
YouTube
characters.
Didn't exist.
Correct. Yeah, this was pre-YouTube.
Right. So there was nowhere to just watch videos online. You had to go to specific websites that were dedicated to videos.
Right. And this was one of those.
Runner was one of them.
Yes. I remember friends and other kids at school really loving that website and singing the Trogdor song.
And Strong Bad. And
Strong Bad. Yep. That was the internet culture then.
You had to go to the specific website.
Yeah, other than chat rooms and AIM. Oh, also the Nokia 3210 launched. So, and this would be
everyone had that phone.
The iconic Nokia brick phone that was like indestructible, and it came with one game on it, which was Snake. So,
I had Snake on my graphing calculator, please.
Okay. Yeah, but could you make calls on your graphing calculator? No.
No. I could only make graphs.
So that was the cell phone that launched there. The main email account websites would have been Hotmail. Hotmail was by far the most popular email. This is pre-Google too.
Oh yeah.
And then Yahoo Mail and AOL Mail were also very often used. Mm-hmm. Toys. Furbies. Oh my god. Furbies were everywhere.
Yeah.
And I never understood. I never had one. I never understood it.
And when I slept over at her house, it would randomly start talking in the middle of the night, and we had to lock it in her closet because it was possessed. I don't know. Why did we want them? I don't know.
I don't know. I never got on the Furby train, but it was like toy of the year. And that's when the Game Boy Color came out as well. So the first Game Boy was a color screen.
With a color screen.
Like, whoa.
Yeah. I remember my brother got that, and it was like, oh my gosh.
Yep.
Mario is wearing blue pants.
Yep. I'm pretty sure we got those for Christmas either that year or the next year. We got Game Boy Colors. And my sister and I both, I think, played Pokemon on those as well as other Mario games and Zelda and things like that. But what about politics, sports, news? What's going on in the real world, not on the internet? This was the year where the impeachment trial of Bill Clinton started. So that started early in 1999, and then he was acquitted, and then he was charged again. Even though I feel like I was too young to really appreciate what was going on, I remember it being very significant and a lot of people talking about it. And I was old enough to understand, but maybe not old enough to really care because I couldn't vote or anything like that. Dr. Kevorkian was found guilty of second-degree murder. So I don't know if anybody remembers this, but I remember this one being a big deal because he was a doctor who, with some of his patients who were terminally ill, was giving them lethal injections. It's people who were suffering and or wanted to die.
It was like assisted suicide.
Yes, it was assisted suicide, and it was not allowed. It's not legal. He was doing it anyway. They convicted him of second-degree murder. On a lighter note, the Space Shuttle Discovery completed its first docking with the International Space Station. That's fun. Lance Armstrong won the Tour de France, but then they took it away from him because he was taking drugs. So, And at the beginning of 2000, January 4th, 2000, Bill Belichick had accepted a head coaching position with the New York Jets, and then he decided to resign and went to the New England Patriots, and that's where his reign of terror began. So I just wanted to point that one out.
Yes, the Patriots' reign of terror.
That's right. So,
you've really set the scene here.
I know, right?
In 1999.
So, imagine a time before the Patriots won a million Super Bowls, a time where...
Before SpongeBob, before streaming services, and
before Google
phones.
Before even a flip phone. They were just straight little freaking block phones.
Imagine this time. Those are definitely good things to set the scene, because I also feel like amongst this background is this idea that technology is emerging. There's a lot of technology emerging, and I think that the emergence of this technology is really partially what fueled the Y2K mania on some level, is that there was all this technology emerging, and because a lot of it was very new to a lot of people, there was also a level of misunderstanding and
apprehension about it too, I think.
And just not having the knowledge to know what was going on in the computer world per se. And so I think that just fueled the fire for a lot of the stuff that came out around the Y2K situation in general.
Not to mention, too, is a pretty big chronological milestone, because I remember just everyone talking about it being like the new millennium. New millennium. It's going to be the new millennium. It's the year 2000. It was this sense of being in the future already, or that it was going to be this crazy
a very,
time.
Tech wave of oh, things are going to get solved by computers and people are going to have flying cars. But then there was also this almost cyberpunk side wave where I feel like a lot of times depicted in films about the future, there was also sort of this dark underbelly of cyber crime and technology.
Yes, I agree with you. Kind of that.
There was a
post-apocalyptic, but the danger of this technology as well. The things that it could be used to it could be used for good, but it could be used for evil too.
Right.
And hackers, I don't know if you remember Enemy of the State, that movie with Will Smith, where they're following him with cameras and listening in on the phones, and they've got satellites that can track him. And it created a lot of fear around all of this technological ability, but then also kind of conditioned us, I feel like, to be a little bit wary of it.
Yeah, because there was also that movie Minority Report as well, which I feel was a similar situation. So I looked up, just in general, I was curious about what the computer literacy rates were, because I was thinking
that's a good idea.
Y2K was such a moment in computers. Y2K was so predicated on computer technology, and I was just thinking how many people actually understood what was happening. And so computer literacy was still pretty low across the board. If you worked in a white collar profession, you were familiar with computers, but your knowledge of computers might be limited to word processing documents.
Email.
Email. And so I looked up the percent of households who owned computers. And in 1997, so granted, this is 2 years before Y2K-ish. Still, in 1997, only 34.6% of households in the United States had a computer.
Okay.
So only about a third
I can believe that.
of U.S. households had a computer. But even if you look at by education levels, even people with graduate school level education, that was only 65.6% of households had a computer. So even highly educated people, 2/3 had a computer in their home. So it was still pretty rare, I would say, to have a computer in your household, which meant that you were probably, again, only using it at work, if at all.
Right.
So compared to today, people didn't interact with computers on the level that we're interacting with computers.
I'm thinking back to 1999, and we did have a home computer, but it was a single computer that we all shared. And then it mostly was used for, like, I could do some homework on it. Like you said, like word processing. We could do some emails.
We played games on
it. Yeah, and games. I mean, for fun. Yeah, things that were for fun. It was not a huge part of our life at that point.
No.
It was like a bonus. Not. It was like a toy, like a bonus toy for us at that age.
So we're setting this stage of computers being still relatively uncommon. There also being a bit of apprehension about computers in popular culture and films. And then what happens is the whole year 2000 problem, which becomes shortened to the Y2K problem. And that was a pretty, at the time, technical situation that a lot of people didn't quite understand the nuances of what the issue was. And so if you are like me and at the time didn't really know what exactly was going on with this situation, I looked it up, and basically what was happening is that in the 1950s, right, when computers first started, storage capacity for computers was really challenging. Storage for computers was really expensive. And so people wanted to try to maximize their storage, because creating storage space in a computer just cost a lot of money. And so they were trying to do everything they could to reduce the amount of storage things would take up on a computer. I even remember this, though, in college. So even when I was taking geographic information systems, GIS classes, when I was in college, a lot of what we talked about was storage. And so that would have even been in 2006. And I remember that in my GIS classes, which is just, it's a computer mapping system, a lot of my classes talked about how you should try to convert data from vector data into raster data, because those two types of data had different capabilities for how much could be stored in the system. And so a lot of the discussion, even in my computer classes in 2006, was about minimizing storage. So it's really only been recent that storage hasn't been a huge issue for computers.
Yeah, now we have the cloud.
Right. Yeah. Well, now we have like massive,
computer, and storage is cheap.
Yeah, right. And now we have massive caves where there's storage facilities and things like this, right? I remember when I went to college, my dad bought me a flash drive and it was a gig of storage. Yeah. And I think it cost $25 for a gig of storage. And he was like, this is all you'll ever need is this gig. Right?
Yep.
Because at the time, that was a lot of storage. And I mean, $25 for a whole gig. So back in the 1950s, when computers first started, they were doing everything they could to minimize storage. And so what they ended up doing is anytime a date was put into the system, they just eliminated the 19 in front of the dates.
So two-digit dates instead of 4 digits.
Yeah, would then be 2-digit dates, right, instead of 4-digit dates. So 1952 was just 52, and 1979 was just 79. And just by eliminating those 2 digits in the date, you saved a ton of storage. So fast forward to, oh my gosh, now the dates aren't going to be 19 number.
We reached the end.
Yes. They're going to be 20 number.
We never thought this day would come.
Right. And everyone's freaking out because what's going to happen when the date rolls from 99 over? Is it going to roll to 100? So it would be 19100. Or is it going to roll to 00, meaning that computers are going to think it's 1900 instead. So either the date is going to get messed up and become a 5-digit situation, or it's going to become messed up and think that it went back in time to 1900. And so that is essentially the basis of the year 2000 problem, was how the computer systems were going to roll over the date.
Some of the stuff that was being discussed at that time, I remember learning about that, but then also hearing, because our power grids use computer technology, and because the banking systems use computer technology now, it's going to affect all of these things which we've become somewhat newly dependent on.
Yes.
From a technological perspective.
Yes, that's the exact situation. And so because we had in the 90s been switching so much more to relying on computers, people were concerned that systems would fail, and particularly large systems like electricity, nuclear power plants, military weapons, credit card machines, banking, all of this stuff. So this problem was actually recognized very early on by IT professionals. As early as 1971, there was a guy named Bob Bemer, and he was working on genealogical software and noticed it back in 1971 that it was going to be a problem. The main guy who really brought it to the forefront, though, was Peter de Jager, and he noticed that it was going to be a problem in 1977 while he was working at IBM, and he was basically just told to let it go because it was 23 years away. And they assumed that systems would, but they also assumed that systems would get upgraded in the next 23 years. And so
someone else will take care of it. Yeah, someone else will take care of this.
It's not going to still be a problem.
Yeah.
But then, if anyone who works in corporate knows, nothing got upgraded, because why would you upgrade something that's still working?
Because the next person was probably like, oh, someone else will do it. Let's just kick this can down the road a little bit further. Like, not our problem right now.
Right. So nothing got upgraded, so much sense. Basically. Yeah. And so in 1993, de Jager, he wrote an article in Computer World magazine, which of course is a pretty niche publication back in the 90s. But he outlined the issue and really made it become a huge thing. His article, it was 3 pages long, and it was titled Doomsday 2000.
Okay.
And so he really made it seem like it was going to be a huge issue because he was concerned that literally no one was taking it seriously. And so he went very over the top on his...
Hyperbolic.
Yes.
One might say.
His hyperbole. He ended up testifying before Congress in 1996 in the US to talk about this situation. And two people who asked him what he was concerned about failing, he basically said that we don't know what will fail, so we have to fix everything. And that was his big platform, was just every single thing is going to be messed up. And so people really latched on to DeJager because he had been writing about this issue and because he ended up being the person testifying before Congress. As a result of that, though, Bill Clinton, probably a good thing he didn't get impeached until 1999. Because basically after 1996 and this testifying before Congress, Bill Clinton organized an effort to combat the whole situation. He organized some massive task forces within the federal government to make sure that the 2000s computer issue would be tackled. Even before that, though, because of the issues with banking and stuff, the New York Stock Exchange had been working on this issue for a long time. They actually had started working on it as far back as 1987 because they were so concerned. Yeah, that everything would fail. It's estimated that the stock exchange spent $29 million and had a team of 100 people to work on the issue. But yeah, it was a very unglamorous and tedious job. Tons and tons of people were working on this issue. It's what led to a huge growth in the IT and computer career path for a lot of people. And I would venture to guess what led to a pretty big growth of people trying to get more coders into the profession and things like that, because there was a huge demand for people to tackle this issue. Some fun facts about how people tackled this issue. On April Fool's Day in 1998, some companies wanted to test their fixes for the Y2K issue, and so they purposely set their mainframe computer dates to 2001 as like a test to see what would happen when the date switched over. But they did it on April Fool's Day because then they could use that as like a cover for changing the date to 2001.
Okay.
But that was in 1998 that they were testing that. And so basically, like you were saying, when December 1999 happened and we got to the actual time of it rolling over, there were no major outages. And it's because people had been tackling this issue for so long. I was reading an article from Time magazine on the history of the Y2K bug, and basically they were just saying, yeah, it wasn't an issue because we prepared for it, and that's why nothing happened. And so now it's become kind of a joke, but it's because literally thousands of people were tackling this problem from the mid-90s on.
To me. That's wild to me, because I remember so much discussion and media coverage of this, and a lot of, I would even go so far as to say, panic over it. And then when nothing really major happened, like you said, like the lights didn't go off, our banks didn't fail, we still had food and water and power, I feel like people kind of were like, oh, Y2K, that was nothing then.
Right.
And I had no idea that amidst all of this kind of panic was also behind the scenes preparation going on, because the way I always kind of saw it in the media, and again, keep in mind I'm like 12, 13 years old at this time too, right, was that there's going to be this major problem and nothing's really being done about it, so you better be ready on January 1st to experience pandemonium. Is what I remember about it. And then when it didn't happen, it seemed like it was overhyped. It was like, well, why are they so worked up about this? Nothing happened.
Yes.
But not thinking about the fact that legitimately they were spending, billions of dollars and, like you said, thousands upon thousands of people to remediate it before that deadline.
Bill Clinton called it one of the first challenges of the 21st century successfully met. Mm-hmm. I was reading this article from a Canadian newspaper about the 20th anniversary of Y2K and how Canada prepared for it. And in that article, they estimated that globally, the work done to prepare for Y2K probably cost about $600 billion. And that was preparation work, which is roughly what the US spent fighting the war in Vietnam. So about the same amount of money globally. And in that article, they interviewed a few people who had been working on it. And basically, some people literally spent a year of their life combing through code for software to make sure that they found every instance of where the date problem would have been a problem and updating it. So a year of their life just combing through code. And I feel like those people are not recognized at all for the work that they did on that level.
I always had the impression that nobody's doing any work on it. We just need to be scared of it.
Right. Yeah. But basically,
I hate to say that, but I feel like that's how it was presented to me.
There were documented instances of there being issues. So say that there were no issues doesn't get to the full story, because there were issues. Some issues included, some were funny.
Tell me about.
Okay, so some were kind of funny. For example, a video store, because 1999, so there were video stores. A video store in New York accidentally generated a $91,250 late fee because the store computer determined a tape rental was 100 years overdue. Okay, so that one was kind of funny. In Delaware, a bunch of their slot machines at one of their facilities stopped working. So, some of them, like I said, were kind of like, okay, who cares? But some of them were a little bit serious. In Jamaica, for example, some of their traffic lights stopped working because they weren't upgraded. In the US, a bunch of credit card companies couldn't process payments, and all of that actually stopped working on my birthday, on December 28th. Because to process a credit card payment, you basically put a hold
the 28th
on the card
is the
for 3 days. And so on the 28th, a bunch of machines stopped being able to process credit cards because 3 days from then was going to be 2000 and they couldn't register the date properly. And so a bunch of credit card machines stopped working. There was a big one in Japan. One of the nuclear power plants reported that their radiation monitoring equipment failed. And stopped working. Fortunately, there was a backup and they were able to resolve that situation within a few minutes. But, those people were on the clock.
Still scary.
They were worried that stuff was going to happen, and then it happened. There in the United States, a bunch of spy satellites stopped sending information to the receivers in the US, and so we lost a whole bunch of spy satellite footage for 3 hours. There was a nuclear power facility in Pennsylvania that the computer hadn't been updated, and so that crashed, and it took 7 hours to restore all of the functions to that. Again, during the 7 hours, they used manual equipment to monitor everything, so it ended up being fine. But, they had to resort to this contingency plan because it failed.
Right.
And then there's like a bunch of other stuff. Passport monitoring software stopped working, so people weren't able to like go across borders. Bus ticket validation machines stopped operating in Australia. Some other funny ones, like some babies that were born recorded as being 100 years old the day that they were born in the system. There was some women that received notifications for daycare services when actually they were 100 years old.
Okay.
1 year old. So so some like things that were easily rectified, or other things like that. Hotmail emails, they listed their dates as being sent in 2099 instead of 1999.
Oh, interesting. No.
So like I said, like some things kind of like, okay, the date on my credit card receipt was listed not correctly, or like the date was listed 19100 instead of,
so more
but then
inconveniences.
A couple things that would right inconveniences and things that you could just be like, okay, that's fine,
right.
But some things that were potentially a little bit more serious and able to be resolved because we knew what the issue was and what was happening. Right.
Well, yeah, and I mean, when I think about it too, like, I guess fortunately that was the extent of the serious problems. And that's probably a small example of what it could have been had there not been all of this effort up until then.
Right.
To prepare for it, or if there had not been the awareness. So we avoided all of the catastrophes, but PSA, Y2K was not fake, which I kind of thought for a while it was like not a real, I mean, I knew it was a real concern, but I got the impression that it was not a true,
Yes. Yeah, people refer to it as the Y2K hoax and things like that. And like, it wasn't. Yeah. People just had been working on it for literal years.
Yeah. That's crazy.
But yeah, you're not wrong in terms of the way it was hyped, though. And I think that the reason why it was hyped that way is people latching on to things that they were not totally understanding were the issues, right? So the media absolutely was talking about it, but they were talking about it in the sense that people were working on it and it was getting fixed. And if people weren't working on it and fixing it, these are the potential things that could have happened. So it was DeJager talking about why we need to fix it. Nuclear systems could fail. Financial systems could fail. The media saying, oh, people are working on it because if they don't, these things could fail because that's what this guy is telling us. And then as a result, other groups started latching onto the potential catastrophes and building out from there. So there was a ton of doomsday prepper situations going on. I remember you could buy Y2K kits that were basically like emergency kits. They had, water and rations and
first aid and
first aid, right? You could buy those in the store. There's a ton of Y2K survival guide books. And I found a bunch that are still available on like eBay. Like you can buy them from people. It's like how to survive Y2K.
Oh, interesting.
Leonard Nimoy did a documentary about how to prepare for Y2K, which also ramped up this a little bit of like hyperbole about it because since he was on Star Trek, people sort of saw him as a little bit more of an authority.
An authority on technology because he is an actor who portrayed someone from the future.
And so the fact that he's doing this documentary on how to prepare, I think they took it a little more seriously. And then of course you get other groups, fundamentalist churches and things like this latching onto Y2K fears to encourage donations to the church, to talk about end times conspiracies. Yeah. And that's where you get the real fringe Y2K preppers and things like that. Yeah. But so some people were legitimately preparing. There was recommendations to take cash out of your bank in case
I believe that
you couldn't get into ATM. Again, like water, having backup power sources and generators and things like that. So,
but we fixed it.
Right. Right. But I definitely remember there being a little bit of a sense of like, I feel like I should be a little scared about this.
Right? Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. Like I said, I think there was a lot of cautionary tale type stuff going on just in popular culture and in the media and just conversationally too. And like you said, I think because people didn't fully understand, I think they kind of latched onto some of the worst case scenarios, but then really blew those up. And I remember it being a time of anxiety for sure. Yes. Like not really knowing what would happen January 1st, 2000. And thinking, okay, it'll probably be fine. But there was this doubt. right? There's a doubt that it's not going to be okay.
There was definitely that lingering moment where I was thinking in my brain, my parents didn't buy a Y2K survival kit. Should we have one of those? Like,
or like I said, after we watched the ball drop, it was kind of like, okay, everyone hold their breath for a minute to see if like the power goes off or something. I don't know what I was expecting, but I definitely was waiting to see if something happened because they'd been talking about it for a while.
I looked up a few references because I remember it being in the news, but I just remember it being also a very prevalent thing. People talking about Y2K and panicking about it. And some things that I forgot, number one, the entire premise of Office Space is about the 2000s computer problem, because when
I had forgotten that too.
They asked Peter what his job was, and he describes it in the movie. He says his main job is updating the banking software for the 2000 switch.
Yeah.
Which, okay, yeah, he was having a very mundane job combing through software.
Yes.
Basically trying to fix the Y2K issue.
Yeah. Yep, I had totally forgotten about that.
And then some other more like crazy examples in popular culture at the time. The Simpsons, how they always did their Treehouse of Horror episodes.
Oh, yes, I remember this one too.
They did an episode where basically everything collapses and Dick Clark's face melts off to reveal that he's actually a robot.
Yeah, and that's the part I remember. It's like a Terminator-esque, Dick Clark is the robot. And the world is ending.
Right, the world's ending. Everyone's panicking. Family Guy did a similar type of parody where there was a massive nuclear blast because the nuclear power plant failed. And the only thing that survives is a Twinkie factory. Which makes sense.
Yeah.
ESPN Sports Center has an advertisement from Y2K that you can still watch on YouTube that I highly recommend. And it's basically them saying, here at Sports Center, we're prepared for Y2K. And then literally New Year's Eve happening and everything collapses. And it's just like pandemonium in the Sports Center office. There's a mascot running wild. There's people trying to do their sportscast with pillar candles in front of their desk. People are raiding the office. It's actually pretty funny.
But at that point too, that's supposed to be comedic, right?
Right.
Like they were taking the comedic approach of like, everyone's talking about this, it's gonna be fine.
And then I also found, I'll link it in the show notes because I think it's really interesting, but it was a booklet that was given to Disneyland employees in case the park needed to close because of Y2K. So all Disneyland employees were given this emergency booklet. Here's going to be the procedures that the park is going to follow if we need to evacuate Disneyland if something happens.
If all the rides stop working and the lights go off. And wow.
Yeah. So I found someone had scanned in that booklet, and I thought that was kind of interesting to read through. It was a serious situation that immediately became a joke when nothing happened.
Right? Well, and what's funny is as we've been talking about it and as we were doing this research for this episode, it really brought me back to that feeling of apprehension, which I had kind of forgotten existed because you're right, it became a joke so quickly.
Yeah.
And people were so quick to dismiss it when major catastrophes didn't happen. I kind of forgot what it was like to have that uncertainty the year leading up to it. There was like real concern and a feeling of doubting that our infrastructure was going to survive this.
And I feel like surrounding that uncertainty, there was just also these weird things that happened, like Bill Clinton getting impeached. And honestly, I really think The Matrix coming out that year was a weird moment. I feel like there was sort of this undertone of, like you said, apprehension that was going on that year, that
around technology in general too.
Yeah.
Just right. Yep. And I remember too, just kind of the question of, have we become too dependent on the technology that we're using? Because at that time, all of those things were really cool and convenient and nice to have. And people were just starting to have personal cell phones, becoming a more accessible thing. And I think The Matrix is a perfect example of that, right? Like, how dependent are we on technology, or like this idea that maybe we don't even really exist in a real world. We exist in one that technology built, which is hilarious to think about now. Because people talk about how dependent we are on our phones and technology and stuff. Literally the same discussion was happening back then at the beginning of it, too.
What's interesting, too, is so a lot of people have talked about how the COVID pandemic advanced our technology by a huge leap. Where we went in terms of video technology, workplace technology, online shopping technology. The pandemic, it's estimated, jumped us ahead anywhere between 5 and 7 years is the estimate.
I believe that.
So we got to where we are now much faster than maybe we would have if the COVID pandemic hadn't have happened. And a lot of people have said the same thing about the Y2K situation.
Really?
Paul Scott, who was in the Ontario government at the time, I have a good quote from him. He said the number of systems that were updated as a result of the Y2K project can't be overestimated. So basically, there was a huge, just massive overhaul of our technology that happened because of Y2K. And so
necessity, out of necessity.
Right. And so if we think about it, whether the date problem would have ended up being a huge problem or not, the end result was that almost all of our technology systems got huge overhauls that they wouldn't have necessarily had if we hadn't taken this Y2K issue seriously.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought about that aspect of it, but that's a really good point. Really focusing in on all of that technology and then making those updates and then pushing it forward in a much faster way. And then, I mean, from there, right, it's like off to the races. So something I didn't realize until you kind of brought it to my attention is that Y2K has come back into popular vernacular.
Yes.
In the form of social media videos a la TikTok, and that Gen Z, or is it even Gen Alpha? Or because now we're starting to talk about Gen Alpha too.
It's the youngs.
Bring the youths.
Youths. The youths are bringing it back.
Yeah, that Y2K is a popular shorthand for early 2000s fashions and trends that are being brought back, which makes sense because fashion does go on about a 20-year cycle. They bring back certain things. But what's hilarious to me is that they're calling it Y2K, because every time I hear that, the first thing that comes to my mind is literally like computers failing.
Right. I would refer to it as Millennium, like the Millennium fashion or something.
Right. Millennium fashion, right? Like why Y2K? I'm like, that's the computer bug, not a year. Like, I don't know.
Right. That's like the scary thing. Like,
right. It's actually even more scary now that we've just spent all this time talking about it. I probably should have been more worried about that. Right. So now they're referring to it as like Y2K fashion. So I also looked up some of the classic, what would have been our fashion trends of that middle school, high school age frame, which
that are coming
was
back.
A time. Yes, trends that are coming back.
Mm-hmm.
So I was reading about Y2K fashion on Wikipedia, and they were saying that the fashion in the 2000s was profoundly influenced by technology. So all of this that we just discussed about how technology is really coming into our cultural consciousness. Around this time, there was a monochromatic, futuristic approach to fashion with metallics, shiny blacks, heavy use of gray, straps, and buckles becoming commonplace.
I would replace heavy use of gray with silver.
Yeah,
and chrome.
Silver. Yes, like shiny, very shiny things.
Shiny,
lots of shiny things,
lots of chrome,
glittery things.
Yeah.
In addition to that. And then it says it aimed to reflect the sleek appearance of its era's new technology. And when the original iPod was introduced in 2001, the white earbuds as well as the iPod itself became something of an accessory. Trucker hats were, I guess, a big deal. Also, velour tracksuits, which I'm not mad about tracksuits coming back. I'm not going to do velour with juicy on the butt.
No.
But
no rhinestone
I will wear
butts.
a tracksuit. No. I will wear a tracksuit. Gigantic belts. Like statement belts.
Oh, yeah.
And those were definitely like an accessory for your low-rise flare jeans, or to put over an outfit like around your waist, you know, really complete your look if you're wearing like a dress.
To complete the look.
Or a tunic shirt.
Over the tunic shirt. Or a belt over the waistband of your jeans because the belt was too big to go into the belt loop.
For the belt loops, right.
Because the jeans were so nose-rise that the belt loop was like a couple centimeters. And the belt was a couple inches.
That's right. And heavily metallic too, right? Like leather with like the metal like holes or studs on it. And then also sometimes multiple belts. Wearing dresses over pants or jeans in particular.
Are people really bringing that back? Dresses over jeans? I think
they are a little bit. They're a little bit, yeah.
All right.
I mean, I'm not saying it's like super mainstream, but I did hear ballet flats are coming back.
Oh.
Which I didn't realize they ever left, to be honest.
Yeah.
Wear ballet flats to any casual, professional, work casual situation.
Arches will no longer be supported. Good luck with the ballet flats.
Yeah, I know, right? Platform flip-flops.
Oh, well,
and platform shoes in general are back. And that is definitely something.
I have rebought some of those. But as a short person, I'm,
yes.
I'm all about that. That's fine. We can bring back
me
platform.
too, actually. Yep, me too. I'm not mad about it. At first, I was kind of like, oh, come on, really? Because I feel like for a while, it was how small and thin can we make shoes? Yep. Right? Like the sandals were like tiny and strappy and basically a piece of cardboard underneath your feet. Yes. And now it's like, okay, let's get the 3-inch soles.
Yeah, the chunky.
Yeah. And low-rise jeans, you know, they're trying to bring back low-rise, but
they're not as low, I will say.
They're not as low.
They're not as low, and that's a good thing. We do not need them to be as low as they were before.
That's right.
No one needs that.
Right. Agreed. Oh, also cargo pants. I've noticed cargo pants.
Yeah, the cargo trend.
Back. I'm not mad about that. I always kind of liked cargo pants. You know, when you need extra pockets.
Right. Well, I mean, because they make girls' pants with 0 pockets, so if you have a cargo pant, at least there's a pocket.
Right? Denim. I feel like denim's making a comeback. Jeans have always been in style, but now we're seeing jean dresses and jean skirts coming back. And vests. Ooh, I didn't know this. Structured vests. I definitely had a vest in high school.
Vests are definitely coming back, for sure.
Yeah.
It feels very 90s mom situation.
Yeah. Logo bags. Apparently those were out, but now, you know, now they're back.
Now they're in.
Like, ooh, belly chains. They say belly chains are coming back. I could pass on that.
All right. Belly chains.
Oh, and capris. I'm not sure I'm going to go back to capris either.
Yeah. I'm okay with a cropped pant, but capris were...
Yeah.
I won't go back to those.
Yeah.
No, not for me.
No, agree.
Not for me. Are we also doing t-shirts over long sleeve shirts? That's the real question.
Good question.
Right? Because that was the big one. The t-shirt over the long sleeve shirt.
It's absolutely fascinating to me.
The real question is, are we also bringing back the ice blue eyeshadow?
Yeah. Yeah, I have seen some of that. And white eyelainer, Emily. I've seen white eyeliner is definitely out there. Yes.
Yes, the white eyeliner.
You youngins have fun with that. But call it Millennium fashion, because I don't want to hear about Why2K anymore.
Yeah,
it just scares me.
That was a fun trip down memory lane, but also, yeah, I'm with you. Let's go change it up. Millennium fashion, because Y2K was a little anxiety-inducing. Thank you for listening to Researching the Obvious. To learn more fun facts about everything that we're researching, follow us on Instagram at Researching the Obvious Pod, all one word. You can also follow us on Spotify, Amazon Music, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you know someone that you think would enjoy listening to all of our findings, please feel free to share or give us a review. Researching the Obvious is written, produced, edited, and hosted by Emily Fekete and Katie Nakanishi. Tune in next time to hear more obvious facts.